The stars bent and twisted as the Terran Warship dropped out of quantum space. One moment there was nothing but the empty void between systems, and the next moment, the Defiant hung in space like a dark blade against the distant stars. The ship was massive, nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, covered in angular armor plating that seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. Captain Jack Morrison stood on the bridge, his gray eyes fixed on the main display. He was a man in his mid-40s with short dark hair showing hints of silver at the temples. His uniform was crisp and professional, but his face showed the lines of someone who had seen combat before. He knew what they were doing here was dangerous. They were breaking every rule the galaxy had set for humanity. "Position confirmed, Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Rogers from the tactical station. She was young, maybe 25, with sharp features and quick hands that moved across her console with practiced ease. "We are at the edge of the Jara system, right where we plan to be." Commander Paul Grant stood beside the captain's chair, his arms folded across his chest. He was older than Morrison, with gray hair and a weathered face that showed concern. "Captain, we are deep inside Karveth territory now. They will detect us within minutes." Morrison nodded slowly. "I know, Paul, that is exactly what we want. We are not here to hide." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. There were maybe 20 people visible, each focused on their tasks. The lighting was dim, with most of the illumination coming from the glowing displays and monitors. Everything about the Defiant spoke of function over form, of military efficiency over comfort. "Sir, I am picking up multiple contacts," Amy said, her voice sharp with focus. 15 ships, Karveth design. They are breaking orbit from the 4th planet and moving to intercept. Their weapons are powering up." Morrison settled into his command chair. "Expected. Open a channel on all frequencies. Let me speak to whoever is in charge out there." Kate Sullivan worked the communications console. She was a slim woman with red hair pulled back in a tight bun, and her fingers danced across the controls. "Channel open, Captain." "Broadcasting now." Morrison leaned forward slightly. "This is Captain Jack Morrison of the Terran Warship Defiant. We come in peace, seeking diplomatic relations with the Karveth Collective. We request a meeting to discuss humanity's place in the galactic community." There was silence for a long moment. The Karveth ships continued their approach, forming a wide net around the human vessel. Morrison could see them on the tactical display, 15 dots of red light converging on the single blue marker that represented his ship. Finally, a response came through. The voice was harsh with strange clicks and pops that the translator struggled to render into English. "Human vessel, you have violated Karveth space. Your species is restricted to your home system. You do not have authorization for faster-than-light travel. You will power down your engines and surrender immediately." Morrison glanced at Paul, who shook his head slightly. The executive officer did not like this situation at all. But Morrison had his orders from Earth Command, and more than that, he believed in what they were doing. "Negative," Morrison said calmly. "Humanity is a sovereign species. We recognize no authority that restricts our movement through open space. We are prepared to discuss terms, but we will not surrender." The Karveth commander did not respond immediately. Morrison imagined the alien sitting on his own bridge trying to process what he had just heard. Humans were not supposed to be here. Humans were not supposed to have ships like this. Everything Morrison had learned about the Karveth suggested they viewed humanity as primitive, barely worth noticing. "Captain, the lead Karveth ship is hailing us directly," Kate said. "Audio only. Put it through." A new voice came across the channel, deeper and filled with authority. "I am Admiral Vectar of the Karveth 4th Fleet. Human Captain, you do not understand the situation. Your species has been classified as developing. You are not ready for contact with the greater galaxy. Return to your system now, and we will consider this incident a mistake." Morrison stood up from his chair and walked closer to the main display. He could see the Karveth ships more clearly now. They were elegant vessels, all smooth curves and gleaming metal. They looked fast and deadly, exactly what you would expect from a race that had dominated this region of space for 300 years. "Admiral Vectar, humanity has been ready for decades. We have simply been prevented from taking our place among the stars. That ends today." There was a long pause. Morrison could almost feel the anger coming from the alien admiral. Finally, Vectar spoke again, and his voice was cold. "Then you have chosen conflict. Your ship will be disabled and towed back to your world. Your leaders will answer for this violation." This is your final warning. Morrison looked around his bridge. Every member of his crew was watching him, waiting for his orders. Amy had her hands poised over the tactical controls. Paul stood ready beside the command chair. Kate had her fingers on the communications panel. Down below in engineering, Lisa Hayes would be monitoring every system, making sure the ship was ready for whatever came next. All hands. This is the captain, Morrison said, his voice carrying through the ship's internal communications. We knew this moment would come. The Karveth believe they can intimidate us, that one show of force will send us running back to Earth. They are about to learn they are wrong. All stations battle ready. But remember, we are not here to start a war. We are here to prove we belong among the stars. Amy looked up from her console. Captain, the Karveth ships are moving into attack formation. Range is decreasing. They will be in weapons range in 2 minutes. Hold position, Morrison ordered. Let them make the first move. The galaxy is watching this, even if they do not know it yet. When the history books talk about this day, they will record that humanity stood firm. They will record that we did not fire first. Paul moved closer, his voice low so only Morrison could hear. Jack, if we take damage, we might not get another chance to respond. Morrison nodded. I know, but this has to be done right. Trust me. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. The Karveth ships spread out, surrounding the Defiant in a loose sphere. Morrison could see their weapons ports glowing with building energy. They were preparing to fire. 30 seconds to weapons range, Amy announced. Morrison took a deep breath. Shields to full power. Point defense systems active. But hold fire until my direct order. Aye, Captain. The bridge was silent except for the quiet hum of systems and the soft beeping of monitors. Every person there knew what was coming. They were one ship against 15. They were deep in enemy territory with no backup and no support. If this went badly, Earth might not even know what happened to them for weeks. But Morrison believed in his ship. He believed in his crew. And most of all, he believed that humanity deserved a chance to prove itself. Karveth ships entering weapons range, Amy said. I am reading energy spikes. They are preparing to fire. Morrison gripped the armrests of his chair. Steady. Let them shoot first. The display flared bright as 15 Karveth ships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Defiant filled with fire. Plasma torpedoes streaked across the void. Glowing bolts of superheated energy that could melt through standard ship armor like butter. 3 of them came from directly ahead, launched by Admiral Vektar's flagship. The other Karveth ships held their fire, watching to see what the human vessel would do. Incoming weapons impact in 8 seconds, Amy called out from tactical. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could hear the tension underneath. This was her first real combat situation. Point defense, engage, Morrison ordered. The Defiant came alive. Along its hull, dozens of railgun turrets swiveled and locked onto the incoming torpedoes. They were small weapons, nothing like the main guns, but they fired solid rounds at incredible speeds. Each turret could put out hundreds of tungsten projectiles per minute. The sound was strange in the vacuum of space, but inside the ship, the crew could hear the vibration as the point defense system opened up. It was like thunder rolling through the hull, a deep rumbling that everyone could feel in their bones. On the main display, Morrison watched as streams of tungsten rounds intercepted the plasma torpedoes. The torpedoes exploded far short of the Defiant, turning into expanding clouds of gas and debris. Not one of them got through. There was silence on the bridge for a moment. Then Paul let out a breath he had been holding. Point defense at 100% effectiveness. Shields did not even activate. Morrison nodded. He had expected this. The Karveth relied on energy weapons because that was what every spacefaring race in the galaxy used. They were effective, well understood, and fit perfectly with their shield technology. But humanity had taken a different path. When you could accelerate a solid object to a significant fraction of light speed, you did not need fancy energy weapons, Captain. Receiving transmission from Admiral Vektar, Kate said. Let me hear it. The Karveth Admiral's voice came through. And even through the translator, Morrison could hear the shock. What kind of defensive system is that? How did you destroy our torpedoes? Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Admiral, those were simple kinetic interceptors. Basic physics. We learned a long time ago that you do not need exotic energy weapons when you can throw metal really, really fast. Impossible. Your species should not have this technology. Clearly we do. Now, are you willing to talk, or do we need to continue this demonstration? There was no immediate response. Morrison could imagine Vectar consulting with his officers, trying to decide what to do next. The Carveth had expected an easy victory, a quick show of force that would send the humans running. Instead, they had been completely ineffective. "Captain, I am reading power fluctuations in the Carveth formation," Amy said. "They are redistributing energy. I think they are preparing for a larger strike." Paul stepped closer to Morrison's chair. "They are not going to back down. Vectar cannot afford to look weak in front of his fleet." Morrison nodded. "I know, Amy. Prepare a firing solution on the lead Carveth cruiser. Not the flagship, the one to its left. Target their engine section." Amy's fingers flew across her console. "Firing solution locked. Main gun ready." "Good. Now we wait and see what they do." The Carveth ships held their position for another 30 seconds. Then, as Morrison had predicted, they opened fire again. This time it was not just 3 torpedoes. It was a full volley from 5 different ships, maybe 20 torpedoes total, all converging on the Defiant from different angles. "Point defense engaging," Amy reported. Again, the railguns came alive. The Defiant was surrounded by streams of tungsten rounds, creating a defensive sphere around the ship. Torpedoes exploded in bright flashes, filling the space with expanding clouds of plasma. But the ship's targeting computers were good, incredibly good, and they tracked every incoming threat. 18 torpedoes died before they could reach the hull. 2 got through the point defense screen and slammed into the Defiant's shields. The ship rocked slightly and Morrison gripped his armrest. The lights flickered for just a moment. "Shields holding at 92%, Paul reported. "Minor power fluctuation on Deck 7, but engineering has already compensated." Morrison stood up from his chair. "Amy, fire main gun. 1 round, targeting Solution Alpha." "Aye, Captain, firing." The Defiant had one main weapon that ran almost the entire length of the ship. It was a railgun, like the point defense turrets, but on a scale that was hard to comprehend. It could accelerate a solid slug of tungsten carbide to 0.3% of light speed. At that velocity, the kinetic energy was devastating. The ship shuddered as the main gun fired. On the display, Morrison saw a streak of light lance out from the Defiant's bow. It covered the distance to the target Carveth cruiser in less than a second. The round punched through the cruiser's shields like they were not even there. Carveth shields were designed to disperse energy weapons, not stop solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The tungsten slug hit the cruiser's hull and kept going, tearing through metal and systems and coming out the other side. The Carveth ship had a perfectly circular hole through it, maybe 2 meters across, running from bow to stern. Atmosphere vented from both ends in white plumes. The ship's lights flickered and died, and it began to tumble slowly, its engines dark. "Direct hit," Amy said quietly. "The target is disabled. No hull breach in critical areas, but their power systems are offline. They are dead in space." Morrison watched the damaged ship drift. He had deliberately aimed for a non-critical area, somewhere that would disable the vessel without killing the crew. This was a demonstration, not a massacre. "Open a channel to Admiral Vectar." Kate worked her console. "Channel open, sir. Admiral, we have no desire for bloodshed, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Your weapons cannot penetrate our defenses, but as you just saw, ours can easily penetrate yours. I strongly suggest we move to diplomatic discussions instead of military action." For a long moment there was no response. Morrison could see on the tactical display that the other Carveth ships had stopped advancing. They were holding position, probably waiting for orders from their admiral. Finally, Vectar responded, and his voice was different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by uncertainty. "What are you, human? What kind of ship is this?" "We are explorers, Admiral. We are soldiers when we must be, but we prefer peace. This ship is simply the product of human engineering and determination. We developed our technology independently, without interference from the Carveth or anyone else. That is why it looks different from what you are used to. You should not exist. Your species was restricted for a reason." Morrison felt anger flash through him, but he kept his voice calm. "Restricted by whom? By what authority? We never agreed to your rules, Admiral. We never even knew about them until a few years ago. And when we learned that the Carveth had been preventing us from exploring beyond our system, we decided it was time to change that situation." "You are making a mistake. The Tribunal will not allow this. The Tribunal will have to accept reality. We are here, Admiral. We have faster-than-light travel. We have weapons that clearly match or exceed yours. The question now is whether we move forward as potential allies or as enemies. That choice is up to you and your superiors. There was another long pause. Morrison sat back down in his chair, watching the tactical display. The Karveth ships were still holding position, but he could see small movements as they adjusted their formation. They were pulling back slightly, increasing the distance between themselves and the Defiant. "Captain, I am picking up a high-priority transmission from the Karveth flagship," Kate said. "It is not directed at us. It is going out on their military channels, heavily encrypted." Paul leaned closer to Morrison. "He is calling for reinforcements." Morrison nodded. "I expected that." "Amy, how long before that damaged cruiser can restore life support?" Amy checked her console. "Their emergency systems are already kicking in. They should be stable within the hour. No casualties based on what I am reading." "Good. Kate, send a message to Earth Command. Update them on the situation. Tell them first contact was successful, but we should expect escalation." "Aye, Captain." Morrison stood and walked to the main viewport at the front of the bridge. Through the transparent material, he could see the stars and in the distance the Karveth ships. They looked so elegant, so advanced, and yet humanity had surprised them completely. He thought about what came next. Vectar was calling for help, which meant more Karveth ships would arrive soon. Maybe many more. The Defiant had won this first encounter, but the real test was still ahead. Paul joined him at the viewport. "We have crossed the line now, Jack. There is no going back." Morrison nodded slowly. "I know, but it was time. Humanity has been hiding in our corner of space for too long. If we are going to take our place among the stars, we need to prove we belong here. And if the Karveth decide we do not?" Morrison turned to look at his executive officer and friend. "Then we show them they cannot stop us." The waiting was the hardest part. Admiral Vectar's remaining ships held their position around the Defiant, maintaining a careful distance but not retreating. They were like predators circling wounded prey, except in this case the prey had just shown it had teeth. Morrison spent the next 6 hours reviewing every system on his ship. Lisa Hayes, his chief engineer, sent up constant reports from the engine room. Everything was operating at peak efficiency. The shields had already regenerated to full power. The main gun was charged and ready. If the Karveth attacked again, the Defiant was prepared. Kate worked her communications console constantly, monitoring Karveth military channels. Most of it was encrypted beyond what her systems could break, but she caught enough to paint a picture. "Captain, based on what I am hearing, Vectar is catching hell from his superiors. They are angry he did not destroy us immediately." Paul was studying the tactical display. "They still do not understand what happened. In their experience, superior numbers always win. One ship should not be able to stand against 15, no matter how advanced. They are thinking in terms of their own technology," Morrison said. "They cannot imagine that we developed along completely different lines. Every race they have encountered followed the same basic pattern because the Karveth enforced it. We are the first anomaly they have faced in centuries." Amy looked up from her station.
"Captain, I'm reading multiple quantum signatures forming at the edge of the system."
"Big ones, a lot of them." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. "How many?" "Counting now, sir. 30-40 still forming. Final count is 42 distinct signatures. They are Karveth vessels, and 3 of them are reading as Dreadnought class." Paul whistled softly. "They are not taking chances this time." "Battle stations," Morrison ordered. "Get me Earth Command." The bridge lighting shifted to red as the alert status changed. Throughout the ship, his crew moved to their combat positions. Damage control teams stood ready. Weapons were brought online. Every person aboard the Defiant knew what was coming. Kate worked quickly. "Earth Command on secure channel, Captain." "Put them through." Admiral Greg Foster's face appeared on one of the smaller displays. He was an older man, maybe 60, with white hair and a weathered face that showed decades of military service. "Jack, we received your initial report. What is your current situation?" "Sir, Vectar called in reinforcements. I count 42 Karveth warships entering the system now, including 3 dreadnoughts. They will be in engagement range within the hour." Foster's expression did not change, but Morrison could see the concern in his eyes. "Can you withdraw?" "We could, sir, but that would defeat the purpose. If we run now, the Karveth will interpret it as weakness. They will think they can push us around whenever they want. We need to stand firm here." "Jack, 42 ships is a lot of firepower." Morrison smiled grimly. Yes, sir. But so is the Defiant. We are designed for exactly this kind of situation. Give us a chance to prove it. Foster was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing the decision. Finally, he nodded. You have authorization for full defensive operations. Do what you need to do, Captain, but try to minimize casualties. We want these people as future allies if possible, not permanent enemies. Understood, sir. Morrison out. The channel closed. Paul moved closer to Morrison's chair. He is right, 42 ships is a lot of firepower. We did well against 15, but this is different. I know. Which is why we are not going to fight them head on. Amy, plot a course that takes us close to the 5th planet. The gas giant. Amy's fingers danced across her console. Course plotted, sir. That will put us on the edge of the planet's magnetic field. Perfect. We are going to use every advantage we can find. The Carveth may have numbers, but we have maneuverability and better sensors. And they are going to make mistakes because they are angry. Kate interrupted. Captain, incoming transmission from the Carveth fleet. It is on all frequencies directed at us. Let me hear it. A new voice came through the speakers, harsher and more authoritative than Vectar's. Human vessel, I am Commander Zrath of the Carveth 7th Battle Group. You are completely surrounded and outnumbered. Your resistance in this matter has been noted and will be taken into account. You have 1 standard hour to surrender. If you do not comply, we will disable your vessel and take your crew into custody. This is not negotiable, Morrison stood up.
Kate, open a channel.
Let me respond. Channel open, sir. Commander Zrath, this is Captain Morrison. We have committed no crime and will not surrender. If you attack us, we will defend ourselves. I strongly advise against further hostilities. Zrath's laugh was unpleasant even through the translator. You are brave, human, I will grant you that. But bravery does not stop plasma cannons. You have 1 hour. Use it to consider your situation. The channel closed. Morrison looked around his bridge at his crew. They were watching him, waiting for orders. None of them looked afraid, which made him proud. They trusted him to get them through this. All right, people, here is how this is going to work. When that hour is up, Zrath is going to order his fleet to fire. We are not going to be where he expects. Amy, prepare to execute that course change the moment they open fire. Lisa, I need maximum power to engines and shields. Paul, coordinate with damage control. We are going to take hits and I need repairs done fast. Aye, Captain, came the responses from around the bridge. The hour passed slowly. Morrison used the time to position his ship carefully, making small adjustments that looked random but were actually very deliberate. He wanted the Defiant in exactly the right place when the fighting started. Kate monitored the Carveth channels. Captain, they are coordinating firing solutions. All 42 ships are going to fire simultaneously. They are planning an alpha strike. Expected. They want to overwhelm our defenses with sheer volume. Morrison settled into his chair. Amy, activate electronic warfare suite on my mark. Full spectrum jamming. Ready, sir. The minutes ticked down. Morrison watched the chronometer on his display, counting the seconds. When the hour mark hit, he did not wait for Zrath to give the order. Execute course change now. Electronic warfare activate. The Defiant leaped forward, its powerful engines pushing it toward the gas giant at incredible acceleration. At the same time, the ship began broadcasting on every frequency, flooding the area with electronic noise that scrambled sensors and targeting systems. The Carveth fleet opened fire, but their carefully coordinated alpha strike fell apart immediately. Their targeting computers could not lock onto the Defiant through the jamming. Some ships fired at where the human vessel had been moments before. Others fired at sensor ghosts created by the jamming. Several ships actually fired at each other, their systems confused by the electronic chaos. Morrison watched the tactical display as 4 Carveth ships took friendly fire. They were not destroyed, but they were damaged and falling out of formation. Point defense. Engage all incoming fire, Morrison ordered. The railgun turrets came alive again, filling space with tungsten rounds. Torpedoes that came close to the Defiant were shredded before they could hit. A few got through and impacted the shields, but the damage was minimal. Approaching the gas giant, Amy reported. Entering the upper atmosphere now. The ship shook as it hit the thin outer layers of the planet's atmosphere. On the main display, Morrison could see the swirling clouds of the gas giant filling the view. The planet was enormous, with a powerful magnetic field that stretched far into space. Use the magnetic field to slingshot us around, Morrison said. I want maximum velocity on our exit trajectory. Amy worked her controls with intense focus. Calculating now, sir. This is going to be rough. The Defiant dove deeper into the planet's gravity well, picking up speed. The Karveth ships tried to follow, but they were not designed for this kind of maneuvering. Several had to break off to avoid being pulled into the atmosphere. Morrison felt the pressure as the ship whipped around the planet, using its gravity like a slingshot. The force pushed him back into his chair, and he could hear the hull creaking under the stress. But Lisa Hayes had built this ship well, and it held together. They came screaming out from behind the gas giant at a speed that made the Karveth fleet look like they were standing still. Morrison smiled as he saw the tactical display update. The enemy ships were scattered, disorganized, trying to regroup. Amy, pick your targets.
Fire at will.
Aim for engines and weapon systems. I want them disabled, not destroyed. Aye, sir, engaging. The main gun fired, then fired again. Each shot was precise, calculated to cripple rather than kill. Karveth ships began to go dark as their power systems failed. Others lost maneuvering control as their engines were destroyed. The point defense turrets tracked smaller targets, firing at weapons emplacements and sensor arrays. The Defiant moved through the scattered Karveth formation like a shark through a school of fish, striking and moving before the enemy could respond effectively. 7 enemy ships disabled, Amy reported. 8, 9, 10. Morrison watched it all unfold, his mind already thinking 3 moves ahead. The Karveth had numbers, but they fought like they always did, assuming their standard tactics would work. They did not adapt, did not innovate. That was their weakness, and Morrison was exploiting it ruthlessly. Commander Zrath retreated with what remained of his battle group. Of the 42 ships that had entered the Jara system with such confidence, only 28 were still capable of faster-than-light travel. The rest were damaged or disabled, drifting in space while their crews worked frantically to restore basic systems. The Defiant held its position near the gas giant, wounded but unbroken. Morrison stood on his bridge looking at the damage reports. They had taken hits more than he wanted to admit. 3 decks had hull breaches that were now sealed. The shields were down to 40% and regenerating slowly. One of the main gun's capacitors was damaged and would need replacement. But they were alive, and they had proven their point. "Captain, we are receiving signals from multiple sources," Kate said, her fingers flying across her console. "Some are Karveth military channels, but others are coming from different systems, different species. They are all talking about us." Paul looked up from his damage report. "Word is spreading that fast?" "Faster than I expected," Morrison said. "A single human ship standing against the Karveth fleet. That is news that will travel across the galaxy in days. Kate, can you isolate any of those non-Karveth transmissions? I want to know what other species are saying." Kate worked for several minutes, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I am getting fragments, sir. Most of it is encrypted or in languages our systems do not recognize, but I am picking up keywords that the translator can handle. They are talking about technology restrictions, development limitations, enforcement protocols. It sounds like a lot of species have been dealing with the same restrictions we were." Morrison felt something click in his mind. "Pull up everything we know about Karveth history. How long have they been the dominant power in this region?" Ben Carter, the science officer, was already working on it. He was a thin man with glasses who always seemed more comfortable with data than people. His fingers moved across his console, pulling up files that Earth intelligence had gathered over the years from distant observations and intercepted communications. The Karveth Collective has controlled the Outer Reach territories for approximately 300 years, Captain. Before that, another species called the Varn held power, but they collapsed in a civil war. The Karveth stepped into the vacuum and established what they call the technological concordance. Technological concordance, Morrison repeated. That sounds like more than just a government. What exactly is it? Ben pulled up more data. From what we can piece together, it is a system of control. The Karveth classify every species they encounter into technological tiers. Species below a certain tier are restricted from developing faster-than-light travel, advanced weapons, and other key technologies. The stated reason is to prevent dangerous technologies from falling into the hands of civilizations that are not ready for them. Paul crossed his arms. But the real reason is to maintain control. If you prevent everyone else from developing the tools they need to challenge you, you stay on top forever. Exactly, Morrison said, and humanity was classified in one of these lower tiers. We were supposed to stay in our solar system, developing at a pace the Karveth approved of, except we did not follow their plan. We developed independently without even knowing they existed. Ben nodded enthusiastically. That is what makes us unique, Captain. Every other species in this region encountered the Karveth early in their development. They were guided, controlled, kept on a specific technological path, but we were isolated. Our system is far from the major trade routes, and by the time the Karveth noticed us, we already had our own technological base. Amy spoke up from Tactical. So when they tried to restrict us, we just ignored them because we did not know we were supposed to listen. More than that, Ben said, pulling up technical schematics. We developed technologies that the Karveth never expected. They pushed every species toward energy weapons and shield technology, because that is what they understood. But humanity took a different path. We focused on kinetic weapons, on railguns and mass drivers. We developed artificial intelligence systems that the Karveth considered too dangerous to use. We built ships around different principles. Morrison looked at the schematic of the Defiant on the display. The ship was unlike anything the Karveth had encountered. It was not elegant or streamlined. It was a blunt instrument, designed for efficiency and raw power. Every system had been built by humans for humans without any outside influence, which is why we surprised them so completely, Morrison said quietly. They were expecting us to fight like they do. They expected energy weapons and standard shield configurations. Instead, we threw metal at them faster than they could track, and our shields did not even register their weapons as a significant threat. Kate interrupted. Captain, I am breaking through some of the encrypted channels. There are 6 species that have been sending coded messages to each other. They are talking about breaking free from Karveth control, about using human technology to build their own weapons. Morrison felt his pulse quicken. Can you identify which species? Working on it, sir. I have names, but no locations yet. The Drael, the Korthan, the Mivan, the Sarath, the Ulvan, and the Kess. All of them are classified in the same tier we were. All of them have been restricted from developing advanced technology. Paul moved closer to Morrison. This is bigger than we thought, Jack. We did not just challenge the Karveth. We showed every suppressed species in the galaxy that resistance is possible. Morrison nodded slowly. Get me Admiral Foster. He needs to know about this. The connection to Earth took several minutes to establish. When Foster's face appeared on the display, Morrison could see he had been woken from sleep. It was the middle of the night in North America. Captain, I assume this is important. Sir, we have discovered that the Karveth have been suppressing technological development across this entire region of space for centuries. There are at least 6 other species that have been restricted the same way we were, and based on the communications we are intercepting, they are ready to rebel. Foster was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this information. How certain are you about this? Very certain, sir. Our science officer has compiled evidence from dozens of sources. The Karveth have been running a protection racket disguised as a peacekeeping operation. They keep everyone else weak to maintain their own power. And now we have upset that balance. Yes, sir. The question is what we do next. We can withdraw, try to de-escalate the situation, or we can push forward, help these other species break free. Foster rubbed his face, clearly thinking hard. If we help them, the Karveth will see it as an act of war. They will come after us with everything they have. They are already going to do that, sir. The moment we entered this system, we made ourselves a target. The only question is whether we face them alone or with allies. Foster looked off screen for a moment, probably checking something on another display. When he looked back, his expression was determined. All right, Captain, but we do this carefully. I want you to make contact with these other species. Share our technological specifications, but make it clear we are offering knowledge, not weapons. Each species needs to make their own choice about how to use that knowledge. Understood, sir. What about reinforcements? The second fleet is being prepared, but it will be 3 weeks before they can reach you. Can you hold out that long? Morrison thought about his damaged ship, his tired crew, and the Karveth forces that were certainly regrouping somewhere nearby. We will do our best, sir. That is all I can ask. Foster out. The channel closed. Morrison turned to Kate. Send a message on all frequencies. Make it clear we are human, and we are willing to share our technology with any species that wants to break free from Karveth control. Include basic specifications for our weapon systems and defensive technology. Everything they need to defend themselves. Kate's eyes widened. Captain, that is going to cause a massive reaction. I know. Do it anyway. As Kate worked on the message, Ben approached Morrison. Captain, What you are doing is going to change the entire power structure of this region. The Carveth will not allow it." Morrison smiled grimly. "They do not get to decide anymore. We are giving these species the tools they need. What they do with those tools is up to them." The message went out across every frequency the Defiant could reach. It was simple and direct, explaining who humanity was and what they had discovered about the Carveth restrictions. It included detailed technical specifications for railgun technology, advanced targeting systems, and shield configurations designed to stop kinetic weapons. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, messages started coming back. Some were cautious, asking for more information. Others were enthusiastic, thanking humanity for breaking the silence. A few were angry, accusing the Defiant of causing trouble that would get everyone killed. But 6 messages stood out. They came from the species Kate had identified earlier, sent on secure channels that took significant effort to decode. Each message said essentially the same thing. They wanted to meet, to talk, to coordinate. They wanted to break free from Carveth control, and they were willing to fight for that freedom. Morrison read the messages carefully. This was the moment that would define everything that came after, if he agreed to meet with these. The Carveth response was swift and brutal. 3 days after Morrison's broadcast, the sensors detected an enormous quantum signature forming at the edge of the Jara system. Kate confirmed what everyone feared. The Grand Armada was arriving. Over 300 warships, including every major capital ship the Carveth could spare, all converging on one location to eliminate the human threat once and for all. Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display as red markers multiplied across the screen. Behind him, his crew worked in tense silence. The Defiant had spent the last 3 days making repairs, but they were not at full capacity. The shields were at 70%. The main gun was functional but could not fire at maximum power. Hull breaches were sealed, but several sections were still depressurized. "Final count is 312 vessels," Amy reported, her voice steady despite the numbers. "They have organized into battle groups. The command ship is a super dreadnought class. I am reading Supreme Commander Keldrith as the fleet commander." Paul stood beside Morrison's chair. "He is one of their best. The Carveth do not send someone like Keldrith unless they intend to finish this permanently." Morrison nodded. "Kate, any response from the other species? Did any of them take the technology we offered?" Kate worked her console, sorting through dozens of channels. "Sir, I am reading 6 distinct fleets approaching from different vectors. They are not Carveth. They are using modified versions of our weapon signatures. The allied species are coming." Morrison felt relief wash over him. They would not face this alone. "How many ships?" "Hard to count with all the interference, but I estimate at least 100 vessels total across all 6 species. They are still hours away from optimal engagement range. And the Carveth? They will be in weapons range within 40 minutes. Morrison sat down in his command chair and activated the ship-wide communications. "All hands, this is the captain. You all know the situation. The Carveth are coming with overwhelming force, intending to destroy us and make an example that will terrify every species in this region. Our allies are coming, but they will not arrive in time for the initial engagement. That means we stand alone for the first few hours of this battle. I will not lie to you. Many of us may not survive, but what we do here today will echo across the galaxy for generations. We are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for every species that has been suppressed, controlled, and denied their rightful place among the stars. If we fall knowing we changed everything." Battle stations. Morrison out. The bridge lighting shifted to red. Throughout the ship, crew members moved to their positions. Damage control teams stood ready. Medical prepared for casualties. In engineering, Lisa Hayes worked frantically to coax every bit of power she could from the damaged systems. "Amy, I need you to listen carefully," Morrison said. "We cannot fight 300 ships head-on. We need to use the asteroid field near the 3rd planet. Plot a course that takes us deep into it. We are going to make them come to us on our terms." "Aye, sir." Course plotted. "Paul, I want teams ready to seal any new hull breaches immediately. We are going to take damage, probably a lot of it. Keep us alive long enough for the Allied fleets to arrive." "Already on it, Jack." The Defiant moved toward the asteroid field, its engines pushing as hard as Lisa dared. Behind them, the Carveth Grand Armada followed like a tidal wave of death. They were not rushing, not taking chances. They moved in perfect formation. a display of military precision meant to intimidate. Entering the asteroid field now, Amy reported. The Carveth fleet is adjusting course to follow. Morrison watched the tactical display as his ship dove into the maze of tumbling rocks. Some were small, the size of cars. Others were massive, kilometers across. The Defiant wove between them with precision, its sensors tracking thousands of objects simultaneously. The Carveth fleet entered the field more cautiously. They were larger ships, less maneuverable, and the asteroids posed a real danger to them. Morrison smiled grimly. This was exactly what he wanted. Kate, open a channel to Supreme Commander Keldrith. Channel open, sir. Supreme Commander, this is Captain Morrison. You do not have to do this. We can still find a peaceful solution. Keldrith's voice was cold and measured. Captain, you have disrupted the order that has kept this region stable for 3 centuries. You have shared dangerous technology with species that are not ready for it. You have made yourself an enemy of the Carveth Collective. There will be no peaceful solution. Your ship will be destroyed and humanity will learn the cost of defiance. Then I am sorry for what is about to happen to your people. Morrison closed the channel. Amy, fire at will. Target engines and weapons. Make every shot count. The Defiant opened fire. The main gun spat tungsten rounds at relativistic speeds, each one finding its target with devastating accuracy. Carveth ships began to lose power as their engines were destroyed. Others lost weapons as the railgun rounds tore through their hulls, but there were too many targets. For every ship the Defiant disabled, 3 more moved into position. Plasma torpedoes filled the space around the human vessel. The point defense system worked overtime, destroying dozens of torpedoes, but some got through. The ship rocked as a torpedo slammed into the shields. Then another. And another. Morrison gripped his armrest as the lights flickered. Shields at 40%, Paul reported. Hull breach on Deck 9. Damage control teams responding. Keep moving, Morrison ordered. Do not let them pin us down. The Defiant darted through the asteroid field like a wounded animal, striking and retreating, always staying 1 step ahead of the Carveth guns. Morrison used every trick he knew, hiding behind asteroids, using their mass to block enemy fire. He fired the main gun through narrow gaps, catching Carveth ships by surprise. Hours passed. The battle became a blur of fire and explosions. Morrison lost count of how many enemy ships they had disabled. The tactical display was a mess of red and yellow markers. His own ship was taking terrible damage. Whole sections were without power. The shields were failing. People were dying. Captain? Shields are down to 15%, Paul said, his voice strained. We cannot take much more. How long until the Allied fleets arrive? Kate checked her console. 20 minutes, sir. But I do not know if we can last that long. Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was exhausted, covered in sweat and grime, but still fighting. Amy's hands never stopped moving across her tactical controls. Kate worked communications while simultaneously tracking enemy movements. Ben called out firing solutions and calculated trajectories. These were his people, and he would not let them die for nothing. All right, new plan. Amy, I want you to target that super dreadnought. The one with Keldrith aboard. Put everything we have into 1 shot. Amy looked up in surprise. Captain, at this range, with our shields this low, if we fire the main gun at full power, the recoil could tear us apart. I know. Do it anyway. Kate, broadcast on all frequencies. Let everyone see this, sir, are you sure? Do it. The Defiant came about, its damaged engine straining to position the ship. The super dreadnought was massive, nearly 10 times the size of Morrison's vessel, bristling with weapons and heavy armor. It was the pride of the Carveth fleet, supposedly indestructible. Main gun charging, Amy said. Lisa is routing all available power. 30 seconds to full charge. The Carveth fleet seemed to realize what was happening. Dozens of ships opened fire simultaneously, pouring everything they had at the human vessel. Torpedoes slammed into the failing shields. Explosions rocked the hull. Shields down, Paul shouted. We are taking direct hits. Hull breaches on multiple decks. 10 seconds, Amy counted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, firing. The Defiant bucked as the main gun fired at full power. The tungsten round left the barrel at nearly 1% of light speed, carrying more kinetic energy than anything the Carveth had ever encountered. The recoil was tremendous, tearing through internal supports and causing structural damage throughout the ship. But the round flew true. It crossed the distance to the super dreadnought in less than a second and struck the massive vessel dead center. The kinetic energy was so enormous that the super dreadnought's shields simply ceased to exist. The round punched through the hull, through every deck, through armor that was supposed to stop anything. The super dreadnought exploded. Not a small explosion, but a catastrophic detonation that lit up the entire asteroid field. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as power cores overloaded and weapon magazines detonated. When the light faded, there was nothing left but debris. The Carveth fleet stopped firing. Every ship seemed frozen in shock at what had just happened. Their flagship, their strongest vessel, the ship carrying their supreme commander, was simply gone. Allied fleets entering weapons range, Kate announced. They are engaging the Carveth from 6 different vectors. Morrison watched as the tactical display updated. The 6 allied species hit the disorganized Carveth fleet from all sides, using the weapons technology humanity had shared. Railguns and kinetic weapons that the Carveth shields could not stop. The battle turned into a rout as Carveth ships were disabled or destroyed by enemies they had suppressed for generations. Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the remaining Carveth.